Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Gript Media and the week that really was with John McGurk and Sarah Ryan for this week, ending the 15th of November 2024. The general election is in full swing. Sarah and I spoke a little bit about it 2 days ago. We're doing 2 podcasts a week for the special occasion that so far isn't very special at all. Sarah, how are you?
Same old, John. Very good.
How was
Very
your week?
good.
How was your week?
My week is fine. I'm happy it's Friday tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Today, Sarah, we have to maintain the illusion. It's Friday today.
I'm happy it's Friday today.
Well, my week was fine.
But did you get an Irish Journalism Award? Because we know that those awards were on this week, John, and I'm sure I would fully expect you to ring me with such a massive achievement in your life, but I'm hoping that you just forgot because you were too busy celebrating.
I regret to say, Sarah, that Gript Media was not nominated for any journalism awards, did not receive any journalism awards, weren't even invited, I'll have you know, to the awards dinner where Micheál Martin handed out the awards to Best Journalist and Best Story and all those other things, and then told the journalists, all assembled, what good boys and girls they were with their journalism. So I regret to say we weren't included in that. But, I wouldn't have gone anyway, because I just think it's bizarre in the middle of a general election campaign to have the leader of one of the major political parties in the country showing up to hand out awards to journalists who are supposed to turn around and cover him critically the next day. I mean, is it just me or is that mad?
Oh, of course it's mad. I mean, it's not surprising, but it's completely insane. Couple of things, though. If Gript had been nominated for an award, you should have gone. And also, Gript should have been nominated for an award. One of our journalists got pepper sprayed in the face this year. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, come on. It's just not even a nod, not even an invite. It's completely absurd. And yes, in the middle of a general election, one of the main leaders of the government standing up and handing out awards to journalists is farcical. And they don't even see it themselves. And that's part of the problem. Or maybe they do and they don't care.
Fatima, I'm glad to say, is recovered from her pepper spraying, and she is safely ensconced in the forecourts where she is reporting every day on the ongoings in the Conor McGregor civil rape trial, which you and I, Sarah, cannot discuss because it's underway. But I think she's going to do a special podcast after that's over, talking people through her thoughts on it. But yeah, Micheál Martin, that was where he was. He was campaigning for the votes of journalists at the journalism awards. What else happened this week? What do you make of the Hutch running in Dublin Central? Let's talk about that, because I noticed something today I want your thoughts on, which is that's the top story on the journal.ie and one of the top stories on the Irish Times. And this guy is getting an awful lot of publicity, and I'm just wondering whether the media are going to end up regretting that when he rocks up with 5,000 votes on count one and ends up taking a seat.
I think it's fascinating and kind of darkly comedic because there's a lot of pearl clutching and, whatever by the establishment media or whatever. But I think the problem for him, and what may turn out to be the interesting thing about that constituency, is that constituency has a lot of homes for a disenfranchised, anti-establishment, anti-government vote. You have Malachy Steenson, you now have Claire Daly, now you have the Hutch, and obviously she's part of the establishment, but you also have Mary Lou. And I think that they will cannibalize each other a bit. I think that Mary Lou would have met. I mean, when I first heard this, I thought it was a rumor. I'm sure lots of people did, and I thought it was kind of a joke, but he's obviously lodged papers and he is running. So I would say that the person who will meet this news with a bit of anxiety is Mary Lou, because if you're a person who's been living in that constituency for a long time and you're a Shinner or a Sinn Féin voter, or, you were, you've got lots of options. We talk a lot on this podcast about people not having options, whether they're on, whether they want to vote against the government or whether they want to vote on the right or they want to vote on certain issues. If you're living in that constituency now, you have loads of homes for your vote. And that should be a bit of a concern for Mary Lou. But I think that people look, it's a democracy and he's allowed to run and he can do what he likes and people can vote for him if they want. And, he might end up doing quite well. Take a seat. I was talking to somebody during the week and they're convinced he's absolutely going to take a seat. I think that's a bit of a tall order. But I've heard rumours and talk about him polling being done and him being on kind of 8%. So, I don't know. Stranger things have happened at sea.
I think back to what happened in the United States last week with the Trump election and the particular appeal that he had for young men in particular. And I'm looking around at potential homes for that vote, the sort of the disenfranchised young man who's kind of sick of it all, who wants to put the boot into everything, really. Hutch is probably a pretty good option, particularly in a constituency like that. Not necessarily that they want him to be elected or in power, but as a complete two fingers or one finger even to the establishment, you can see the appeal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if he got 600 votes, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got 6,000. I have absolutely no idea how that's going to go.
I don't think he's going to get 600. I think there's a few things for him. There's a few, as you say yourself, what's going in his favor is that he has a name that's recognizable, and the media will give him an inordinate amount of, publicity between now and polling day, despite themselves. The
Hmm.
problem for him is that, like, things in theory and things, in practice are two different things. And the type of voter that you're talking about, and I've looked at, the local elections and the European elections and turnouts, and they're quite poor in some of those areas. So there might be a load of the kind of guys you're talking about sitting down the pub talking about how it'd be absolutely gas to vote for the Hutch. But do they actually get up and go out and do it? I don't know. And I think that might be a bit of a difficulty for him. Sinn Féin will have a stronger machine getting their vote out. Mary Lou's vote will be frog marched to the polling stations, and they are, in fairness to Sinn Féin, their get out the vote effort is probably one of the best for any political party in Ireland that I've ever seen. So they'll be getting their vote out. Will the Hutch manage? I don't know, but I think he'll damage. I'm sure Malachy Steenson isn't happy about this. I'm sure Claire Daly is a bit like, oh, could have done without this. So I think it damages a number of people, and it'll affect the election whether he gets elected or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd welcome your thoughts on Mary Lou, because I thought she seemed a little bit tetchy this week at times on her press conferences. And I think she's going to have, I think from what I heard, she's spending more time in the constituency than they expected. And I was just looking, and we're going to talk a little bit about this poll from Galway West in a little while. But they have Mairead Farrell there in Galway West down on 9%, a seat that they would be certain to hold, or thought they would have been certain to hold, where she's not suddenly certain to hold it. And I'm just wondering, like, if they are seeing numbers like that across the country, whether Mary Lou's seat is one that would obviously be vulnerable in any other election for Sinn Féin, right?
Yeah, I think that there's two leaders in our. I wish it was three. I'll get to that in a minute, but I think there's two leaders in Ireland of political parties that are at risk of losing their seat, and I think it's Holly Kearns and I think it's Mary Lou. I wish it was Ivana Bacik, but I think the fact that Eamon Ryan's not running now probably rules that out as a possibility. So,
Well, what about Roderick O'Gorman in Dublin West?
oh, sorry, I keep forgetting about them. I just keep thinking they're
Hmm.
gone already. They're still here. Yeah, Roderick O'Gorman definitely at risk as well. Sorry. I forgot Roderick was the Rodders. I forgot he was even the leader. Um,
Yeah, Rodders.
but I think that Mary Lou should definitely be concerned. But I think for her own seat, but just, we talk about the campaign being flat as a pancake, and we talk about, there's not been a scandal or an issue or big imagination capture yet. But Sinn Féin are I don't see it changing. About to have a terrible day. They're going to lose a lot of
Well,
seats, and she should be
they
worried
got
about her position as leader. I would say, even if she does hold on to her seat.
the Red Sea opinion poll the weekend had them on 18%. Now, in the local and European elections, they got what, 13%?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where that extra 5% is coming from.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who the voters are who, in the local and European election, said, well, I didn't vote for Sinn Féin there, but you know what? I've forgiven them now. I'm going to come back and vote for them this time. I don't know where those voters are. Maybe they're out there. If you're one of them, write it in the comments below. Make a welcome change from the comments last week, lads, which were just kicking my ass. But, write something about that if you're one of those Sinn Féin voters, and let us know, because Sarah and I haven't met any of them. We don't know who they are. And I'm just skeptical. I'm skeptical of the polls about Sinn Féin. That Galway West poll does not match a national figure of 18%.
Yeah, and I think that, like, before people, get into the comments and start, like, I do know Sinn Féin voters. Like, personally, I'm friends with people who voted Sinn Féin, who stopped voting for Sinn Féin because they're extremely angry about a number of key issues that Sinn Féin they feel fell down on. And there's nothing that's happened between June and today, or May, June, and today, and this general election, that has changed their minds back. So that's why I'm skeptical about those polls. I think that, there's like a cohort of people who will always vote Sinn Féin. We've talked before about thinking that their bottom is probably, would you say 10, 11%, regardless of
Something
whatever
like that, yeah.
ever happens, they'll always get 10 or 11%. But I'm not seeing any imagination in their policy, in their campaign, in anything that they've done since then that's gonna, I mean, they're not even makes people, they haven't even, like, not even make people switch back to Sinn Féin, even just take the heat out of the anger. Because I don't see that
Well,
that's gone.
Matt Carthy, my old friend and fellow Monaghan man, actually I thought was good today. Ben asked them a question of immigration, and he
Yeah, I
was
saw.
focusing in on planning permission and the use of hotels in small towns. And I thought he gave a very good, coherent answer. He basically made what should be the blatantly obvious point, but apparently hasn't been until now to Sinn Féin or anyone else, point that if you want to open up a business in a small town in Ireland, you have to go through 5 or 6 planning hoops, objections, government getting in the way, bureaucracy
Yeah,
getting in the way. But if you want to open up that building and put migrants in it, the government will roll out the red carpet. And he said that's wrong. That was a good answer. That was whether how and whether they propose to actually do anything about it is another issue, because they're still going to have to find someone to put migrants, right? But it was a good answer. But I just think it's all a little bit too little, too late, and it
yeah,
all feels very defensive from them. So we'll see.
yeah. I think if Sinn Féin could go back in time, they would have opposed that referendum vehemently, and they would have softened their stance on, or on immigration in a massive way, and listened to their voters a long time ago. And now I think we're hurtling towards this, a general election. Nothing has changed, and I still feel like they're on course to lose probably 8 seats, maybe more.
Well, we'll see. I think that the losses might be a little bit softened by the fact that there are more seats this time. So you always have to bear that in mind. Everyone should be gaining seats nominally, because I think, how many is it? 13 extra seats?
Yeah.
Something like that. 13, 14 extra seats are being contested in this election because we've enlarged the Dáil. They've actually enlarged it physically, by the way. The slot right to the Taoiseach's right in the Dáil is now going to be for people to sit in. It used to be for civil servants. They've actually enlarged it physically to make room for all these new TDs we're going to elect.
They also built a bike
Let's
shelter. I'm sure that increases the general footprint of the Dáil as well, does it?
Does, yes. They'll probably have to enlarge the bike shelter now.
Yeah, the bike shelter needs an extension. Although the Greens will hopefully all be gone, so there probably won't be a lot of cyclists.
Right. Well, let's move on. Let's not just shinner bash for the hour, because we get accused. Sinn Féin voters really don't like it when you shinner bash. Let's blue shirt bash instead, because I thought Fine Gael, I said this in our podcast on Tuesday, I think they've had a terrible start to the campaign, but I think it's only gotten worse in a way. Did you see Helen McEntee on television? I think it was last night, talking about immigration.
No, tell me.
No, I didn't see her on television either. I wasn't watching television, but I saw,
You don't
I saw
watch
a clip
telly?
of her.
Yeah.
I don't watch Irish telly. We're catching up on some movies this week on the recommendation of a friend that I hadn't watched in a long time, so I've been doing that. But Helen McEntee is on Virgin Media, The Tonight Show, and she's asked about immigration, and she basically says, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it written down, but she basically says, look, you've got millions of people on the move around the world from war, and we have to accept them. And we're doing our best basically to discourage some of them from coming here, but we're under lots of pressure. And look, this has to happen. We have to speed up the process for people coming here, and we have to continue to accommodate them. I was just thinking, this is precisely what your policy has been for the last 5 years. And you're basically sitting here going, well, we're just going to have more of it. We are just going to accept the principle that whoever wants to come here can come here, and our sole obligation as a government is to process the application fastly in acceptance or rejection.
Well, we don't do that, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's the line. It's the hire more bureaucrats, speed it all up, fix it. That's basically the line behind Fine Gael, behind which Fine Gael has retreated. And I'm just thinking that if you're sitting there as a voter who's concerned about this issue, and we know per the polls a good chunk of voters still are, it's not the right message. It's not in any way the right message, because there are an awful lot of voters out there who go, well, why can't you just put a limit on it? Why can't you just put a limit on it? What you say we've these international obligations, well, why did you sign up to them? Because what benefit are they to us? I mean, it's not as if there are Irish people going and seeking asylum in Afghanistan. That's not happening. So what is the point of this? And I just got the impression watching her that Fine Gael still is not on top of this issue. And if that becomes an issue, as it may, as the campaign goes on, they're going to start hurting. And then I was watching Simon Harris with Ben Scallon today, where Ben asked him a fairly straightforward question about, why did you call President Trump a ghoul? And this was while he was in the spiel of, we have to, Simon Harris is doing one of his very sincere, frowny faced kind of like, we have to be respectful in the campaign and talk to each other nicely and not use abusive terms. And Ben goes, yeah, but you called President Trump a ghoul a couple of years ago. Are you sorry for that? And he was like, oh no, I don't apologize at all. And I thought he just came across as immature and insincere. And I'm not wearing my partisan hat. I don't have a partisan hat, but I'm not wearing any kind of partisan hat when I say that. I'm wearing the objective looking at it. I thought it was a bad moment for him. And I just don't think they've had a lot of good moments so far. Have there been any good Fine Gael moments that caught your eye?
No, and there was a couple of again, I wasn't watching, but I got lots of texts and I saw some clip of a couple of really poor outings on Virgin during this week between Jack Chambers and Hildegard Nocton, kind of tearing lumps off each other and generally seeming a bit childish as well. So I don't think there's been any wins. I mean, a couple of videos of Simon Harris dancing around with some woman in a shop somewhere, cringe. But nothing, like there's nothing of substance. It's just like as we were saying before, like more, it's boring. And
well, they launched this proposal.
Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. As I say, they did launch this proposal to cap the cost of childcare to 600 quid a month. Did you see that?
Yeah, 200 per child. Basically, Sinn Féin said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, economically, I don't know how that's feasible.
And they do it within the first year. Nobody believes you. Nobody believes you. I mean, I pay childcare, so do all my friends. Like, again, it's kind of like I was saying before about legalizing drugs and stuff. Like, you've been in government, you've had ample opportunity to do things about this. There's been some small tweaks, and I gave credit where credit was due on childcare at the budget. But ultimately, why is there no tax relief even on childcare for people? Even that would be something. But there's no commitment to it, and it's just bandied around an election, and anybody who falls for it is a fool. Nobody's giving you €200 a month childcare. John, like, the bill for one child is £1,000 if you're lucky. Nobody's figuring that out in 1 year. It's just cynical political crap.
But Sarah, I also disagree with you on the premise. Like, I regard this, maybe I'm wrong, but I regard this as like basic leaving cert economics. If you've got X number of children in the country and X number of childcare places in the country, and you say, we're going to make it so that everyone can pay no more than €600 for childcare. Well, the number one thing you're doing is increasing demand for childcare because you're lowering the price point whereby more people can access it, right? You're making childcare more affordable. Okay. Yeah. What does that do? That then puts more children into the system, which puts more pressure on the system, which probably increases costs in the system, which drives price up further. There's no plan actually from either party to increase the number of childcare places, or there's no coherent plan to do that.
Yeah.
They're simply saying we'll interfere with the price point in the market. And when you do that, you bring more kids into the market and overload it.
But you also, again, you're tinkering around the edges with a market that you don't understand. If you make, like, I have my children not in creche, one child in Montessori, 2 children in school, right? And when I was staying, and now I'm working, right? When I was staying at home, theoretically, if childcare per child was €200 a month, €50 a week, I might have put my kids into some form of childcare just so I could clean the house. So now I'm taking up a space that a working mother now has to compete with me for. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. But also, you're not going to do it. So it's irrelevant. It's just politicking. It's like, so far this week, John, we've had, legalizing drugs, more money on healthcare, tough stances on immigration, and €200 childcare. All nonsense, all political posturing about nothing, and still avoidance of having conversations about some of the issues that people actually want to talk about. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Fianna Fáil campaign for a little bit, because we haven't talked. We talked about Fine Gael, we talked about Sinn Féin, and I kind of feel like boring old Micheál Martin has been allowed to moontour his way through the campaign, kind of unscathed, but at the same time, very unconvincingly. Did you see the row about where they basically invented 5 billion quid in their manifesto?
No, go on.
So Fine Gael, in fairness, took them to task on this, and nobody cares. Nobody cares because everyone knows that they'll just negotiate between them a programme for government. But Fine Gael are right. Fianna Fáil basically invented €5 billion in their manifesto that they then proceeded to spend on stuff, even though the €5 billion isn't really real. I think 2 billion of it, for example, was coming from what they call tax buoyancy. Now, tax buoyancy in sort of layman's terms is we're going to get more taxes than we expected. Well, that's a bizarre thing to claim because obviously you're doing your projections based on how much taxes is going to come into the country, and they're just like, no, we're just going to invent 2 billion that we think is going to come in over and above our projections.
Next week, I'm going to buy a load of shoes and tell Keith because it's based on the projections I have of money that's going to come from somewhere.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And what's more, like you'd think that a party that had invented €5 billion and then proposed to spend it would have come up with something eye-catching, but no. I can't really think of one single Fianna Fáil spending proposal. They're going to spend some more money on housing. Obviously, they're going to, what did they say this week? They're going to make investments in health. I mean, you've had 5 years of the most buoyant economy that we've had to make investments in health, and you haven't done it yet. But we're supposed to believe you'll do it now. And I don't know. I just don't know if I was a middle-of-the-road, regular Joe voter who wasn't informed in any of this stuff. I just don't know what way I'd be going because independent. I'd definitely be going independent. And not out of any particular love of independence, just because, like,
or it'd be
going
independent or ain't to, because at least ain't to are honest about who they are, have done a bit of thinking, stood by women for the referendums, and are generally just doing a bit more kind of work, I feel.
Yeah, but you're thinking like us now, and I'm trying to think of like a middle of the road. Okay, I don't know. I had a very popular tweet now during the week. I don't often have very popular tweets, but I had a popular tweet where I said basically, Sarah, my fear is that the Soc Dems are going to turn into like the Green Party of this election, where people are just going to go, oh, they seem nice, and they're for nice things like equality and rainbows and puppies and all that sort of stuff. And Holly Kearns is a nice person, seems like a nice person. I'm going to vote for them. I'm just worried something like that will happen, and they'll come back with 12% of the vote and 17 seats or something, and then we'll have a nightmare of them in government.
I don't
You don't think so?
I don't
think I'm wrong.
I don't think the Soc Dems have, penetrated into the public awareness that enough. They're not a. The reason why that happened with the Greens is because the Greens have an obvious ideological position that was extremely popular at the time, particularly that there was a general election and local elections and climate change and whatever. Soc Dems are, it's all very nice and puppies is what you say, but like, what's the Soc Dems even about? They're just kind of like a, slightly more modern version of Labour and just want even more dudes with beards in your changing room with your wife. Like,
But you say that, but like, what are Fianna Fáil about? What are Fine Gael about? What are Sinn Féin? What do any of these parties stand for?
But
it's all the same mush.
100%. But the Soc Dems haven't been around long enough to have kind of developed a culture of voting for the Soc Dems because they're the Soc Dems. So I just don't see how. I don't see how like they're. I'm not saying they're going to do badly. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to get they're not going to be the Green or the Shinners or the Greens of we've had last general election. It was Sinn Féin that were expected to do well but did better. The local elections before these recent ones, the Greens kind of ran away with it. I don't think we're going to see anything like that with the Soc Dems. Not for now.
No, I just disagree. I think that I'll tell you why I'm putting myself in the mind of a voter somewhere in like Clontarf, and I'm thinking, well, don't really want to vote for the government because they've let me down on whatever issue. Not comfortable with the Shinners. Labour have been in government, they've had a go. The Greens have been in government, they've had a go. Don't want to vote for an independent. Can't vote for people for profit. They're too crazy. Soc Dems, they've never been in government. They're new. They're fresh. They're a complete turning of the page. I think there are voters like that who are looking to vote for something new. I think the Soc Dems are shiny, new, nice, and for nice things that you like. And I'm just, I think there's a chance. I wouldn't be surprised the kind of election campaign we're having if they end up doing very well. Maybe I'm entirely wrong, but that's what I'm worried about.
I mean,
because make no mistake, they're terrible. They're terrible, but we'll find out.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say as well is that I saw an interview this week of Micheál Martin. He did, the group chat, the podcast, Virgin Media podcast, and he was very
Yes, that
salty.
lot.
That competitor, but he was very salty when he was challenged a bit about this being the first generation of, pensioners who'll be still renting, and he got like, it just came to mind because you were talking about Mary Lou being kind of tetchy, but Micheál was being kind of tetchy as well. And like he was like, well, that's what, like kind of, well, that's why we're focusing on housing. Like that's why we're okay. But like, sorry, since when is Micheál getting so tetchy when he's asked hard questions? I thought he was supposed to be
But he's not asked hard. Look, I have the highest respect for Gavin Riley at Virgin Media. I have no issue with Richard Chambers, and I have no issue with is it Zara King?
Zara King,
the other girl.
Yeah,
no issue with them. But I wish someone would just say to Micheál, you have been in politics since 1988. Am I right? 1987. That is you in 3 years' time you'll have been 40 years at this, and you've been a senior minister for most of that time, or you've been the leader of the opposition. You've been one of our leading political figures for almost all of your adult life. And now we have this first generation of pensioners who are your age, Micheál. They're your age. They're Micheál Martin's age. The people who he has been guiding through, shepherding through their lives as one of our leading politicians. And they're the ones, the first generation, who won't have homes. Are you fucking proud of yourself? I wish somebody would ask him that. I wish somebody would put that to him. Because it's his record, Sarah. It's his record from the 1995 government, the 1997 government, the 2002 government, the one of the last 5 years. This has been his record. And what has he to show for it? A smoking ban. Well, I banned smoking.
Okay, well,
go on, defend him there.
Didn't expect to be defending Micheál, but how is it his record?
It's absolutely his record. He has embodied the ideology of this state at every step along the way. Whatever has been popular at any given time, Micheál has been for it. Whatever has been unpopular at any given time, Micheál has been against it. He has spent a career going, there go the people, I will follow them now and tell them it was my idea. And where has it gotten his party? 22%. When he came into politics, they reliably got 47%. Where has it gotten the country? Bleh is the answer. Kids can't get homes. Marital breakdown rates through the roof. Drug addiction is through the roof. Crime is a problem in our cities. Dublin is not as nice a place as it was. This is his political career. We've been voting for him now, the people of Cork South Central, for almost 40 years. If they do it this time, they'll have literally condemned themselves to 40 years of being represented by Micheál Martin. Is the country better off? Economically, yeah, sure. Is your community nicer? I don't know. I think he has a lot to answer for. I really do. And it's not personal because he's not the only one. There are others. I mean, Willie O'D is on the lampposts in Limerick, and I feel sometimes like asking Willie the same question. But he hasn't been at the top. He hasn't been one of the figures kind of directing affairs for as long as Micheál has. Anyway, Fianna Fáilers can give out to me in the comments below.
I'm sure they will, but I mean, look, Micheál's been around a long time, and you're right. And one of the issues that I would have with Micheál is that he, has ideological positions, and if you don't like them, he can have other ones. But, I don't know. I mean, his whole career is not down to this. I just think that he's getting tetchy, and he's he kind of has a sort of an air. I don't think it's a good look when you have an air of kind of everyone's kind of stupid, and I'm just trying to explain to you stupid people how, we're so amazing and we're building loads of houses. And that may very well be true. But, the first generation of pensioners who are still renting is a terrible, terrible, terrible indictment of whatever has been done for the last 15 years. And Fianna Fáil weren't in government for a portion of that, it must be stated.
No.
But we're not in...
But those people...
We're not in good shape. And I've said before on the podcast that there's lots of things in Ireland that do work well, and the economy, as you say, is good, and whatever. But when we're failing, we're failing big, and we're failing big on housing for a generation. We're failing big on health. We're failing big on immigration, and we're failing big on a number of other things. And his kind of contempt for people who even ask him a mildly difficult question about it is not a good look.
Yeah, so I'm just doing the sums here, just to come back on my point. which is that if you are getting your pension today, you're turning, is it 66?
Yeah, I think so.
66, I think, or 67. Let's say it's 66. If it's 67, well, then it's easier. But let's say it's 66. You turn 66 today and you're still renting. That means that when Micheál Martin was first elected to the Oireachtas, you were what age there? 29.
Starting your career.
Starting your career. He has shepherded or been a leading figure in shepherding you through the economic development of the country over the course of your entire adult life. And you are now the first generation of pensioners to still be renting. And yet, a good chunk of the electorate is going to turn around and go, we'll just give him 5 more years, see if he fixes it then. I mean, good luck. Do it. Go ahead. But I suspect that you won't be the last generation to be renting on foot of it. And I think probably the country would be better off had we had a leader who had more original ideas than Micheál Martin, whose sum total of original ideas in his entire political career has been ban smoking in pubs.
Well, I think
so that's my case.
I mean, I think that you're right, but I also think that there's, one of the takeaways from the US election was that the campaign that Kamala ran, which was, despite the fact that I am the vice president, everything that's wrong is somehow nothing to do with me, or, and I wouldn't change a thing, was a terrible strategy. And I'd like to think that, there might be some consequence to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil kind of having these fake fights with each other. And then when being asked about things, kind of going, yeah, well, like, calling for this and calling for that, and we need to do this and we need to do that, and acting as if it's not them who's in charge. I'd like to think that there might be some consequence, at the poll, in the ballot boxes on that. But, I mean, those polls we're talking about, they tell us nothing and they tell us everything. Stabilitarians and people who are angry at the government, and when it comes out of the wash, we just end up pretty much with what we have now. Again, might change, something might happen, but that's where we're going at the moment.
Well, let's say with Fianna Fáil, because I wanted to talk about somebody specifically who is famous for 2 things. First, having once been on television, and second, being a Sarah Ryan lookalike.
Yeah, sure.
Gráinne Seoige. Gráinne Seoige is polling at 7% in Galway West. Not exactly setting the world on fire there.
No.
But I think that poll presumably understates her. I'd be shocked if she didn't get elected.
I mean, surprises happen, and I'm not sure. This is like very, very, very anecdotal, but so a couple of things I've seen online, and a couple 1.5 stories I've heard from somebody I know in Galway paint her as not in a great light in terms of her canvassing ability, and not great at taking any kind of negativity. Would be how I would phrase it nicely. And I think that Galway is a constituency that's quite large, obviously, but quite small in terms of how do I explain this? It's a big constituency in one way, but it's a very close community. And I've noticed before in previous elections,
they all know each other in Galway.
Yeah. And things get out and things go around like wildfire, and things can affect an election in Galway faster and more profoundly than I think other constituencies that I've noticed. And that might just be my impression, but I have a relationship with Galway myself through family, and I spend time in Galway a couple of times a year, definitely in summer, and I just feel like
she means the Galway tent.
Yeah. Listen, I like horses. What can I say? But no, I have family who live in Galway, but I wouldn't be surprised if that went badly. But I again think that it's just very early, and like the when there's not enough meat in the election campaign, the stories have to come from polls, and the only polls that are worth writing about are polls that show things that are worth writing about, if you know what I mean. So a lot of this is just kind of noise, because all media is waiting and looking for something to to throw a match onto this election campaign. And so I think she will probably get elected, but I'm not like on the basis of her celebrity and just on the basis of the political lay of the land there. There's Eamon
Yeah,
O'Queeve
well,
isn't running, so like
yeah, but I think that might be a problem for Fianna Fáil because he got all his votes out of Connemara. Well, not all of them, but the vast chunk of his votes. Basically, if you think of Galway, if you're a nerd, you want to think of the Galway City constituency, think of it as basically two constituencies. There's Galway City and then there's Connemara, the rural areas, the west, and Connemara always elects at least one TD, and then Galway City generally elects two, three, and then maybe the other one comes from the other side. Noel Grealish, for example, always takes his votes more and more in that neck of the woods. But thing is, in Connemara, there are two strong candidates running there. Fine Gael have Senator Sean Kine, a former TD, knows the lay of the land, is not a bad canvasser, will be hoping to pull some former O'Keefe votes. And there's also Noel Thomas of Independent Ireland, very popular independent councillor who got a very high profile because of the immigration issue, topped the poll in his local electoral area, is being backed by Seamus Walsh, another independent councillor who topped the poll in his local electoral area, both of whom, by the way, before they left Fianna Fáil for Independent Ireland, were very close to Eamon O'Keefe. And Fianna Fáil's total vote in that poll is up 14%, with John Connolly, her running mate, at 7% alongside her. Yeah, I don't know. If the poll is accurate, I would not like to be Gráinne Seoige. I wouldn't. But who knows? Maybe
that would be a big disappointment now, I think, and a surprise. And that's the thing about this election, that it's not potentially as it stands now, and as I said, it could change, but as it stands now, it's not at a high level, it's not going to be that surprising, but there will be small level things that are surprising, little constituency kind of things like the Hutch or Gráinne Seoige that will throw up surprises, losses that weren't expected, wins that weren't expected, etc. And that could be one of them. But I think the Fianna Fáil headquarters would be extremely disappointed with that result if that's the way that plays out.
I really don't know why. What have they got to be disappointed with?
I know.
What did you do for the last 5 years, lads, that made you think you were definitely entitled to a seat in Galway? Well, they're going to get one. They're going to get one, okay? The 14%, they'll probably get one. I was looking at that poll. Catherine Connolly is the independent. She will be safe. There's a seat for Fine Gael. Hildegard Naughton will take that. There's another seat for Noel Grealish. He will take that. That's 3. That leaves 2. Sinn Féin will be aiming for 1, and Fianna Fáil will presumably take the other. But it's not guaranteed to be Gráinne Seoige. That's all we're saying. And Independent Ireland have a shot. They have a real shot at unseating somebody. So it could be the Shinners. Who knows? Because they're only 1 point behind. We've talked enough about the election. Let's move on to matters stateside, because you were very excited this time last week about the victory of the Orange Man. Are you very excited by his cabinet appointments to date?
Like, some interesting stuff. Marco Rubio has managed to somehow worm his way back into the good graces of Donald Trump, so that's kind of interesting to watch. No, it's kind of one of those things where people in America overwhelmingly voted for change. They overwhelmingly voted for a different way of doing politics, and they're about to get it. And
good and hard.
And I hope it goes well, and I hope that smart people are put into positions and they actually do implement change. Like, I'm very, for example, as you know, I'm really interested in Robert F. Kennedy and what he does vis-a-vis the food, what's in food in the United States. They have, I think it's 60 ingredients in their food that are illegal in the EU. There's big problems with their food, with their health, with obesity, etc., etc., etc. And I'm really excited to see what he does. And I think everybody should be really hopeful that he does something transformative in that regard. So there's people in there who are interesting. Elon Musk on this government, what's the name of the organization that he's setting up? Government
DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Wouldn't dare to dream. The Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, beautiful.
It's named after it's a troll heading, because Elon Musk has been big on a cryptocurrency called Dogecoin. That's his kind of his memes. Sorry, some people will just not understand what I'm saying here, but if you don't know, it's kind of like what's known as a meme stock, which is where people just buy it to send the price up for fun. It's crazy stuff. But yes, so that was Elon Musk was a big fan of something called Dogecoin, and then they named the Department of Government Efficiency, which is DOGE. So that was kind of an in-joke for those who might not have gotten it.
But I think that ultimately, Donald Trump, democratically won the election in America. He won the popular vote as well. People want to change. This is going to be change, and I hope it turns out really well. There's some interesting characters. I mean, a Fox News anchor has been appointed. There's a number of
I
different.
liked that one.
Well, he was
I
in
liked
the
that one.
defense forces, and like he's not completely off the wall.
Well, we know a couple of things about Donald Trump. First of all, he only likes people who are good on television.
Mm.
So you don't get any better than a Fox News anchor. He doesn't particularly like appointing unattractive people. This guy's not unattractive, nor many of his appointments, really, except maybe Matt Gaetz, who we'll come to. But he likes appointing people who are good on television. Marco Rubio, very good on television, not bad looking guy. The Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence, very good on television, very good looking woman. But I liked the Department of Defense pick because it was a complete outsider. That's what I liked. I think the problem with the US DOD, if you know anything about it at all, is the revolving door between the Pentagon and the big defense contractors, and the sense to which you always bring in a kind of a company man to run it, no matter who the president is. I think it's obviously in need of some reform, and I think somebody who's bringing in outside perspective might be really good. And look, the guy is anything I've seen of him, he's a very intelligent, capable guy. I have no issue with that. Now, Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, I mean, I think that's just taking the piss, frankly. But who knows? Who knows what will happen there? I don't even think he'll be confirmed. That's my prediction, but we'll find out.
I don't think he's going to get.
I get predictions, but don't.
I don't think he's going to get them. I don't think he's going to get them all right. But I think that a lot of people they feel it in Ireland as well, like very cynical about politics, about political insiders, about in Ireland we would call it the civil service, that people inside having power, the elites, the this, the that, whatever. And like, no matter what way you like, what way you feel about it, he won, and now he's going to do what people wanted. And I hope it goes well, because I think the American voters deserve improvements in their lives, as they say. But also, but whatever way it turns out, people are going to get what they want. And wouldn't that be nice here? I mean, wouldn't you love like somebody to come in and set up the Department of Government Efficiency and start like kicking ass and taking names on things like the Children's Hospital and the way the government spent? Wouldn't we love somebody who actually had a background in, something large capital projects or, defense or whatever, to go in and start making massive changes to something? I mean, that's the kind of thing that people like you and me and people who listen to this podcast want. So whether Donald Trump gets it right on every single one of these appointments, I think that's probably unlikely. But people are getting what they want. And so I hope for everybody's sake that like at least most of these turn out to be really good and make some really interesting changes. But you can't say, oh, I'd love that here, and then say, oh, that person's a bit too crazy. That like this is dramatic. This is change. This is the change you wanted. So let's see it.
Do you think Fine Gael will be doing better or worse in the election if, when Michael O'Leary made his comments about teachers and the press went kind of going, oh, Simon, what do you think about Michael O'Leary's comments about teachers? Do you think they'd be better off or worse off if Simon Harris had said, he made a joke. I didn't think it was that funny, but it's a joke. But I'll tell you what, if I'm re-elected, I'm going to pay him whatever he asks, and I'm going to appoint him to lead a department in the government that is purely about cleaning up government waste. Do you think Fine Gael will be doing better or worse?
I think they'd be doing. I don't think they'd be doing better if he said he'd pay him whatever he wants, because I think that would spook people. But ultimately, I think that he would be doing better, and I think that there's an appetite for that, and I think that there's a kind of a Fine Gael type voter, fiscal conservative, sort of loosely former PD type of voter, who is crying out for that kind of thing, who has nowhere to vote and is just desperately waiting for some political party to come out and say, actually, our proposal is that we're going to set up the government, the Department of Government Efficiency, or the watchdog for this, or the whatever. And, we're going to stop spending, we're going to change the culture of how money is spent by governments going forward. I think there's a huge appetite for that. But I just don't think they're going to do it.
No, that voter is me, by the way. Hi.
And me.
You don't know.
And me, yeah.
Now we are also full spectrum conservatives here. Don't freak out at us, but we're of that view.
But I think, but it's not just that. I think that if Simon Harris, and I think people would like, and I would like, it's not just about him saying that Michael O'Leary would head up a department or whatever. I think that I think that people would have more respect for him as the leader of the country if he'd come out and just said that was a joke that was made at a political event and it's not really of any interest to me to talk about it. Good luck. Like, instead of leaning into it, we need a bit more of our politicians to just say I'm not engaging with this silliness. Good luck. I'm not talking about it. It's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, let's talk about one last thing. Do you not think it's hilariously bizarre that the COP29 is on at the moment in Azerbaijan, and because we've got a general election on, none of our lads have to go. There's no Taoiseach over there trying to save the world in the Federated States of Micronesia by committing us to carbon. They can all stay at home now all of a sudden because there's an election on. And yeah, I think happens every year.
I saw Eamon Ryan came out and said that he's fearful that climate change has gone down on the list of priorities dramatically. And I was like, mate, that's the first time I've agreed with you in about 10 years. It kind of goes to show that a lot of, and this isn't for me to dismiss or diminish climate change or the environment or any of that stuff, but it just goes to show that they don't really care about it. It's just all do you know what I mean? It's just posturing and telling you what they think you want to hear. But when they have to be burning leather, shaking hands and dancing around like fools to get their votes in, they don't give a shit about it anymore. And that tells you everything you need to know about where that's at. And so for the first time ever, I was like, yeah, Eamon Ryan's right. They don't care.
Yeah, and in fact, they're actually running away from the pledges on the campaign trail. I've seen Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael both kind of basically telling the farmers that there'll be no more of this green nonsense this time, lads. You can trust us.
But I also think it's really funny.
Words,
I also think it's really funny the way, so Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are orchestrating these kind of fake fights to have with each other so that they can kind of beat their chests and talk about who's special and better than the other. But what I also think is kind of darkly comedic is how, to continue my analogy from last week where I said that the election was kind of like a guy you used to date saying to you at 3:00 in the morning, come on, there's nobody else to bring you home, come home with me. But to continue a dating analogy, I think it's really funny how Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, while they're having their little fight together, have just ghosted the Greens, act like they don't just not, you know what I mean, have left them on red, aren't texting them back, know that they're probably not going to be in the next government and now just act like they're not there. And it's I'm here for it in a way because I'm not a fan of the Greens, but I also think it's just comical that they're just who? Roderick, who? Let's have our little fight here and let's see who ends up winning enough seats to join us in government next time, but it won't be the Greens, so let's just not answer their texts.
Very true. But that reminds me, I can't remember whether it was last week's episode or the one we did on Tuesday, but I remember having a conversation with you about Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Where I said that they all would talk a good game, but there was no chance they'd ever agree with the Independents because they always want a left-wing party. They always want a left-wing party in there to excuse what they want to do with the civil servants and so on. And then I think it was the very next day, somebody in the Times of the Indo, I can't remember who, reported that, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are lining up the Labour Party to be their sort of third wheel this time. And then, of course, there was a very hilarious moment where various Labour Party candidates like Marie Sherlock got really upset by this. You can't take the Labour Party for granted. We will drive a hard bargain if we go into government with you. And I was thinking, first of all, no, you won't.
Yeah.
And secondly, you'd be pushing an open door anyway because they
won't.
Want you in.
You are literally dying to be in government and you're so lonely out on the limb there for ages, and you would dance with whoever would bring you. No one believes you. Stop, will you?
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny that they're already lining up apparently the Labour Party as the patsies for the next. And the Labour Party will fall first. The Labour Party will make before this election is out. The Labour Party will do what the Labour Party always do, which is they will make some grand, unkeepable promise. Well, they've already done it in a way because they said that they earmarked $6 billion of the Apple tax money to nationalise the construction industry, which absolutely won't happen. But they'll make some other kind of retail promise as well that'll try and get them up to 8 or 9 seats.
They'll invest more money in they'll invest more money in sports. That was what they were talking about today. And they'll say all those things, and then they'll get in and they'll do silly things like try to get the To Kill a Mockingbird banned and other nonsense, and then they'll just get hockeyed out the next time.
But I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say this one time to rural Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael TDs. I know some of you watch this podcast. Some of you listen at least. If you guys think that for the next 5 years, you are going to enjoy voters talking to you about the record in government of Minister Ivana Bacik, you've got another thing coming. I mean, take Eamon Ryan, Roderick O'Gorman, multiply it by 15 in terms of the way she will set your voters' teeth on edge. So I would just say think twice about that. But they probably won't.
Yeah, but also I think that the public are better served by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil going into a government that's a little bit, you know, a little bit more fragile with a group of independents, because I think it keeps them in check more. Whereas like Labour will just go along with whatever they're told and just be delighted for the ministerial offices they get, and that's not good for.
Yeah, but they will also. I mean, like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael want an excuse not to undo what they've done in government because they are quietly progressive. So if they go in with an independent Ireland, that might mean rowing back on some of the carbon stuff, for example, the carbon taxes and the agriculture stuff and all that sort of stuff. So they don't want to do that. This is the thing you have to understand. They'll say they'll block the Greens from doing any more, but they if it were up to them, they wouldn't undo anything that's been done. Whereas if they go in with an independent Ireland, or an Ain2, if Ain2 had enough seats, they might be pushed to reverse some of that stuff. More likely, I think, with independent Ireland, in fairness.
But if independent Ireland get a load of seats, and they might, and or if Ain2 get a load of seats, and they might, like they're that's what people voted for. This is the thing. Like it's not a kind of a, it's not your like private treehouse in the back of your garden where you arrange what seats you want. It's a democracy.
And telling you now, if Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have the opportunity, they will go in with a left-wing party ahead of a right-wing grouping every single time. I'm telling you that now. And prove me wrong. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong, but I tell you that now.
Well, we'll see.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll be back early next week. Hopefully something more interesting will have happened in this election, or Sarah and I are going to have to start reading you bedtime stories because it's been a very boring election so far. Do movie reviews or something. We're committed to doing 2 podcasts a week for the next little while through polling day. If you're not sick of us, we won't be sick of you. But we'll leave it there for now. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good time. Don't think about the election. We'll be back next week. Talk to you soon. Take care.